Now, my next guest captained the Irish rugby team from 2003 until 2012. He was crowned World Rugby Player of the Decade in January 2010. But for the last 12 months or so, there's been endless speculation about his retirement. He and his wife, actress Amy Huberman, are often regarded as Ireland's golden couple, and they welcomed their first child, Sadie, into the world last year. Brian O'Driscoll, you're very welcome to the programme.
Thanks for having me.
I mean, I know people are saying that retirement will change your life, but I'd say Sadie changed your life much more than retirement will.
For sure. I can't really remember what that old life was like. That's how the last 6 months or so have been. But it is absolutely brilliant. Doesn't matter how many times she might have you up during the night. That smile in the morning when you do come in, and
makes it all worthwhile.
Just makes it all go away.
Worthwhile. You're obviously still in absolutely the pink of condition, and there will be people at the end of the year saying, "Just one more year, Brian. Just one more year." But the answer is
no. This is the one more year. I kind of had to think long and hard about this one, and there was a number of factors. Obviously, I had to talk to Amy and listen to my body. I wanted to make sure that I was still wanted in the Leinster setup and the Irish setup. Joe Schmidt going and taking the Ireland job. And then I suppose, it would be rude me not to mention, the chance from the stands in the RDS of one more year, that the fact that you're still wanted by the faithful is, it does mean an awful lot too. So that definitely added to it also.
You won't know how you feel until it actually happens, until you've left something behind and you're in a different environment. How are you preparing for that moment? Because sportsmen have said to me before that it's like a bereavement when you finally realise that you're never going to walk out in an Ireland shirt anymore. You're never going to hear that crowd. You're never going to throw your body over the line.
Yeah, I remember I had a neck operation after the World Cup in 2011, and there was talk at the time that I mightn't get back playing from it. And when that kind of started hitting home, I realised, Janie, am I prepared for this now? I've been a professional rugby player all my adult life. I don't really know anything different. I don't really know the big bad world that most regular people see. So I have been in the process over the last few years of trying to get myself prepared for the transition into some other things that I have an interest in. Nothing's going to replace running out in front of 60 or 80,000 people, but something that gives you a purpose to want to get up in the morning and work hard for.
Now, you've done punditry when you were injured. You were brought on to give your opinions. That's a double-edged sword because, at this stage, while you're still playing, and suppose you're a pundit this time next year, you'll know everybody intimately in Leinster and beyond, and indeed in the Irish squad, and yet you'll be expected to say, very honestly, what you think.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways to skin a cat, though, as well. I spoke to Tim Horan, who was, a rugby hero of mine over in Australia, when I was growing up, and I got my first cap against him, and he, pretty much immediately after retirement went into broadcasting and into punditry, and I said, guys that you've played with, how do you go about, giving, saying a negative thing that they have done in the game? Yeah. How do you put that spin on it? And he said, there's lots of different ways that, you can talk about a bad pass from George Gregan, rather than slating him and saying what an absolute shocker from George Gregan, it's like, that's a very uncharacteristic pass to George Gregan. So
you're damning with faint praise.
Exactly. So you can put your own mark on it.
But it is amazing how quickly, you've had a very long life in rugby in the centre, but for some people, if you look at team sheets, how quickly they can change. That you look at a team 5 years on, and there may be very few survivors from your own time. Yeah,
I think the turnover of players has escalated over the last few years. A combination of things. The game is definitely getting more physical, and as a result, players are having to retire earlier than they would have liked. But also, competition for places has increased massively since the game has turned professional. It's almost 20 years ago now. Those first few years were a learning curve for everyone. Now people realise that a good living can be made from rugby for upwards of 10 years. So people, rather than going and, you still have time to be able to go and do, third level education whilst being a professional player. As testament, to that are a number of the guys within the Leinster setup. So you can still prepare yourself for the afterlife while still loving, playing in blue or playing in green.
Now, you mentioned how professional it is and how tough it is physically compared to before. The kind of tackles that are made these days, the kind of hits that people have to give and take. I mean, even since you started, you've been playing since you were a child. I mean, do you see the difference in what you've had to learn to take?
Yeah, the game has changed dramatically. Impacts have become bigger, collisions harder. I think that's to do with the athleticism of those players, that they are stronger, faster, fitter, and so those two players of 100 kilos running full tilt at one another, one carrying the ball, one tackling, is going to create a huge collision. And obviously the knock-on effects of that are going to be increased injuries. And more recently, you've obviously seen a lot of concerns about the concussion issues. And yeah, it's definitely something to very much keep a close eye on.
This is a study that has just come out suggesting for the first time that concussion in rugby can lead to Alzheimer's-like symptoms, the developments of protein in the brain, which ultimately can lead to dementia. I mean, that is a massive concern, given the amount of concussion that we see in the modern game.
It is, and I guess to a degree in the professional era we're somewhat guinea pigs, because we haven't had the progression of people going through their careers and getting to old age, and we don't know the downside to the escalated collision. So that is. It's something to be very mindful of. Listen, it can't stop us from living our lives as we are. Someone has to be a guinea pig, and I guess we are. But at the same time, there's huge emphasis being put on the safety of players too, which is of paramount importance.
I mean, when you look back, that infamous spear tackle that landed you on your crown. If anything were to happen, any diagnosis, you'd be wondering, was it that? Was it something else? Was it a different game? Was it?
Yeah, I think, listen, that was probably slightly different in that, I didn't land down on my head. I landed down on my shoulder, and it was dislocated as a result. Yeah, but, there's been other collisions where I spoke to my folks about it the weekend, about concussion, and obviously it's very topical. And I've actually only ever been knocked out once as a schoolboy playing down in Musgrave Park.
Completely senseless.
Knocked out as in lost consciousness for 5-10 seconds. Any other time that I've been concussed has been, head spinning or kind of. I've never even really felt unwell, but headaches or head spinning rather than actually being fully knocked out.
Yeah.
So
it's a difficult definition, isn't it? Concussion.
It is.
And one guy stands up and he's staggering, and then a couple of minutes later he's jogging along again, and everyone says he's okay.
I think that's, again, I keep going back to, faith has to be put into the medics to make the ruling, because players are always going to want to get back on the pitch. That's the adrenaline in their bodies that's charging around, and you don't want to ever be seen to be letting your teammates down. So that's a given. I think when you come off and there's these new set of rulings where there's a concussion bin being tested out for 5 minutes, where they're to assess the player and see if they're capable of going on and resuming. I don't know whether that has actually worked out or not, but definitely in the cases of medics, if in any doubt, I think we have to weigh on the side of caution and refuse players entry back onto the pitch.
What about the more mechanical things? Have you talked to any of the old boys, the forwards of yesteryear, about replacement hips, replacement knees, and all the other spare parts that a lot of them have had to have, because the wear and tear on the joints is enormous?
It is, and I guess what we're very hopeful of is that we have a superior level of fitness that is carrying us through the games, and so that's protecting us from bad injuries. So so they're they are exactly, essentially, and touch wood, I've been pretty fortunate that I haven't had too many joint issues, and fingers crossed it won't carry on into later life. But there's plenty of guys that I've played with that have bad knees, or no one's quite gone for the hip replacement yet. But
I was wondering. I met you. I think it was up in Killiney Castle one day when Eddie O'Sullivan was in charge of the team, and I saw all the lads coming in, and you seemed to me to be absolutely enormous, as indeed Eddie O'Sullivan was. I mean, for a coach, he didn't need to be the size he was at all. He was body built to the nth degree. And then when I met you later, maybe when Declan was in charge, you seem to have reduced somewhat. Is that a fair observation? Were you less bulky with Declan than you were with Eddie?
Yeah, I think that's... it's probably it's not reflected in the coaches. The lads used to always slag Eddie that he walked like he was carrying 2 televisions under each arm. But I don't think it's necessarily a reflection on the coaches. It's more an understanding throughout the course of your career. You find what works best for you, and
because there was a perception maybe you weren't as mobile.
The game is cyclical too, though. That defences are on top or attackers on top, or it becomes a kicking game or a chase game, and it changes in the course of each World Cup cycle. So at times, maybe in the mid-noughties, I felt as though I needed a little bit more size, and I was playing at 15 and a half, 16 stone. But in more recent years, I've realised I need to be able to be more agile. I need to be able to carry less weight, for 80 minutes, because the game is becoming more exhausting, and carrying an extra stone around for 80 minutes is not easy. So I found my fighting weight is much less, probably down at 91 or 92. And actually, in the course of the Lions, because of Hong Kong, because of our flight, because of dehydration and everything, I've struggled to get my weight above 90 kilos.
Really?
And that was probably the first time since being in school I was below 90 kilos.
That's another thing I have to ask you, because I know with sports people who train as much as you do, and therefore you eat what you like. I mean, you can have the chips, you can have the chocolate, you can have, and indeed when Leinster are training, I know there's a table full of stuff, and the guys are eating constantly.
Yeah, but it's changed dramatically. It's good quality now. Like everyone else, you have your cheat meals, and I don't call them that because I don't know. I don't.
No, but
I
when
don't
you stop
rely
expending that energy,
yeah,
you're
you do. But also your
lifestyle.
appetite lessens significantly when you're not expending as much energy. So, during it's noticeable during your holidays when you're not working out as hard that your appetite lessens. So that's not really of a concern. I think. I've never been one for standing on the scales and identifying what, if I'm a certain weight, I'm happy, with where I am, shape and condition. But I see going forward that probably being a good barometer for me.
Some of the texts coming in, Brian. Just wanted to say a big thank you to Brian. Greatest player I've ever seen playing. As a nation, we owe him a huge amount of gratitude for the last 13 years. One question: what's the greatest match you played for Ireland in? That's from Dave in Killarney. That's a tough question, I'd say.
Yeah, there's probably your own greatest, game, but from an Irish perspective and team perspective, which is everything that it's about, is hard to look away from a one-off game. Looking at Croke Park in 2007 against England, that was really something special. And
sometimes, of course, there are games that you got away with, rather than famous victories. You squeaked a victory which you don't deserve. They're often the ones to be savoured, isn't that?
They are, but at the same time, like I look at one like. Was it Georgia in the World Cup in 2007? We scraped by, and the ref had to go to TMO for a decision. That they got over our line, and we managed to get by and beat them. But I don't ever remember looking back at that fondly and thinking that was a good win against Georgia.
No, certainly not. Of course, for Leinster, you've had famous wins, and the Heineken Cups. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I think probably that one of the greatest ones that we definitely had was the Northampton
Millennium Stadium
turnaround in the Millennium Stadium. You'll remember the aftermath fondly in Cardiff Airport. But it was, I think it wasn't just that game. It was the group we had to come through to get out of, get into the quarterfinals. Then we had Leicester and Toulouse in the quarters and semis, and then to beat Northampton after a 6-point deficit at half time. You take immeasurable pleasure out of something like that.
Some more of the texts coming in. I, for one, can't understand why headgear isn't compulsory in rugby, even to avoid bad cuts. That's from Sean and Kerry. I mean, it took hurling a while to bring in headgear, but eventually they
cuts
did.
Isn't a major issue, and research has shown that headgear is not going to make a massive difference to concussions. So
really,
it doesn't. It doesn't,
because it's about the neck being jerked.
And the collision and the force. I think a small half-inch or quarter-inch of padding isn't going to make a big difference in that level of force.
Another one says, just wanted to say a big thank you. I've read that one. Plenty of evidence. Look at professional boxing littered with dementia and Parkinson's sufferers. Rugby is fast becoming unsustainable, says John in Limerick. Lots more on this. Rugby cripples growing children, should not be allowed play. Rugby is becoming a dangerous sport with the emphasis on power and physical domination over finesse, invention and skill. My son is promising, but I worry that the inevitable rule changes will come too late to save his health. Where are the silent medical profession on this? Bring the tackle below the waist or diaphragm, and it will end the damaging double hits and open out the game. Keep up the campaign, Hookie. All the best to Brian.
I think with that, I think there's lots of different ways to make tackles, and I think one of the best examples I learned during the Lions tour is the Welsh flanker Dan Lydiot, who changed his style of tackling completely from being a ball and all tackler to a chop tackler, and solely because in 2011 he looked at the group that they were in the World Cup, and he saw South Africa and Samoa, and he thought there's a couple of big units there. It's going to be easier to tackle them around the ankle than it is throw body shots at them.
The big tree falls harder.
Exactly. So he reinvented his tackling technique, and he must be one of the best chop tacklers in the world now, and he puts incredible force into it, but his technique is so phenomenal, gets his head out of the way, and I haven't heard of too many concussions coming his way, and he is one hell of a
and
physical
he's right
player
at people's feet.
Exactly.
All
He's
time.
putting himself in the danger zone.
For people who don't know about the technology of rugby today, are you all GPS'd when you're playing now?
You are. Yeah, you are. So everything's recorded. There's no hiding anymore.
No slackers.
No. There's no slackers at training. We all wear GPS vests and units at training, so they know. They've got a live feed on the side of the pitch, so they can see distance covered, top speeds, decelerations, accelerations, and they can flag who might be struggling in particular sessions and who might be fatiguing, and pull guys out of sessions if they need to, or give extra work to those that they feel are lagging behind a little.
So they could actually say, Brian O'Driscoll, we've clocked you over 50 metres. Time to retire. Just using the technology.
There's been a few calls for that, all right, but they've fallen on deaf ears. But no, I think it's I don't think you can use that information solely as to how good a rugby player someone is, because that's just about the athleticism. It's not about the rugby brain. So you always have to marry that with the actual playing capabilities of the
guile.
And the guile, correct.
Yeah, there was I don't know whether you saw the documentary on Tommy Bowe, where they strapped all sorts of probes on.
I thought it was a really good documentary.
It was very good because it indicated that the hips are the giveaway. So if you're going to dodge past a player, if you watch the guy's hips, you'll know which way he's going to go. If you watch his shoulders, you'll never know. If you watch his feet, you'll never know. Hence, the All Blacks are all black, so you don't know
where the hips are.
Isn't it very clever?
There you go.
The science of the whole thing.
Maybe we should be wearing green shorts.
Maybe so. Brian, the whole furore about the final test. You must have been gutted, but you're ever the gentleman and ever, discreet and political, if you like. You never showed your hurt.
No, I think you have to, I've lived by it for a long time, talked to teams about always putting the team first, and it's not about individuals, and then you can't all of a sudden live something different than what you've been saying when it happens to you. So, yeah, it was a huge disappointment to me, and, huge hurt inside, but I think you have to put a positive projection on things and step away from it and realise that it was about the squad and the team winning that final test, and it wasn't about me.
But you could have led that team to victory too, don't you? I mean,
I like to think
in
that,
your bones, you know that.
I like to think that. Yes, the two boys played a decent game in the centre, but the way the game panned out, we got forward dominance, and there was a decent platform put on for us. So I'd like to think I would have been okay in that environment. We didn't probably get those chances in the first couple of tests, but that's what happens. And you have to. That's why coaches are there. They have to make hard calls, and on this occasion, I was the one that missed out.
And it's worse because there's a camera up your nose all the time. because of the big fuss there was about Warren Gatlin's choice for the final squad in that last test. You knew they'd be looking at you, when the team trot out. Cue Brian O'Driscoll's face, when the victory happens. Cue Brian O'Driscoll's face.
Yeah, but I don't. You are thinking it might be going on, but you're not. You're not. You're not in the know as to when each time the camera pans to you, so you're still just living yourself, and you're trying to just be positive. And in a perfect world, we would have won by 1 point, and the two boys in the centre would have had a shocker, but we still would have won the series.
So then you can be vindicated.
And there wasn't a record scoreline, but that's not the way it happened. And I'm still, a series winner, albeit I look on the series victory very differently than those that were involved in that final test.
In the final test. You will be protected this year, according to the Leinster coach. They're not going to use you for every game and get the last ounce of Brian's last year. They're going to be strategic. What's your
I've printed his quotes out and stuck them up on his wall to mention now. I'm not far away from doing it. No, I think he understands. You do. You don't want to be left out, but you have to realise too. I spoke to the Irish fitness coach there recently, and he came up with a great phrase of managing expectation, particularly when you're a little bit older and you've a few more injuries. Plus, when you've got a newborn and you're not sleeping the same way that you would have, and you've got more. There's a lot more asked of you, and I'm still trying to prepare for the afterlife. I've so much going on, so it's about trying to manage expectations. So when I go in, the fitness coaches know that if I'm not feeling great, I'm not taking it easy. I'm doing it for a reason. And when I feel good, when I've slept well, I'll train harder. So it's about just getting a good balance and getting enough workload in to prepare yourself for playing games.
I mean, you've won everything that you need to win for your own legacy. But for the next year, have you things in your mind that you'd like to achieve?
You want to win everything that you're involved in. Yeah, it would be lovely to go and win a championship in the Six Nations. It would be lovely to win another Heineken Cup and finish off my provincial career with a victory. And yes, I've been lucky that I've managed to win some things in the latter parts of my career. Most recently, being part of a Winning Lions series. So it's nice to tick some boxes. I guess a big one this year, and have to get myself in shape to be selected in the process for selection for the All Blacks in November. That's one that missed out on multiple occasions, and this is for sure the last chance to get a go at them. So that would be a lovely one. If I was to pick one out for the year, maybe that would be it.
Any reports from overseas from the boys, Ronan and Johnny Sexton in Paris?
Yeah, I've been in contact with Johnny a bit more than Raj. Just texting. Things are very different there, and there's always a transition of getting used to your new environment, as I'm sure you know only too well.
Something similar.
So. Yeah, I think it's understanding what works for them and how you become a cog in the wheel rather than come in and stamp your input into things. So,
but you remember poor Trevor Brennan in Toulouse. He was kind of overlooked for a lot of the time. Now, people will remember Trevor for one famous interaction with the crowd, but Trevor, I mean, he was a brilliant asset to Toulouse. I mean,
he won a couple of Heineken Cups with them, and having been a substitute, mainly substitute player for Leinster. So, in his years leading up to moving to Toulouse. So, there's great scope for guys to go and achieve good things, but they have to. Racing are putting together a package rather than expecting immediate results. So I would say it'll take a couple of years for them to get some fluidity.
A couple of quick questions. What's the best advice to my 14-year-old who recently started playing rugby in school? That's a very general question.
Train as you're going to play.
Train as you're going to play?
Yeah, train hard. Yeah, I think probably not enough emphasis is put at training really hard, because it best prepares you for when you get to take the pitch on in school on a Wednesday or on a Saturday.
Yeah. And the final one, can you ask Brian how he thinks Leinster will adapt to the new coach this season?
I think I've been really impressed with Matt's ideas, and he's a popular guy. He's sarcastically humorous, but he treats everyone the same way, and you can be Leo Cullen and get the same stick as you can be one of the guys in the academy. So I think his ideas and his detail is kind of picking up where Joe left off, but looking down a slightly different avenue, just tweaking a few things rather than trying to change our whole way of playing.
They say no one is perfect. Brian comes very close. That's on the text screen here. One last question there. You've had 13 years at the very top, and other people have had to let you do your thing. Is it going to be Amy's time now? She'd say, now, Brian, you've had your day in the sun. You've won all your caps and won all your trophies. I'm an actress. I'm a working actress, so you stay at home, you change the nappies, and I'll go out and do my thing.
I'm absolutely open to her career bringing us to whatever part of the globe it might do. All going well. I think she's enjoyed a bit of time off with with the arrival of Sadie, but I think she's probably hungry to get out and do some more work. She's going to Toronto now to the film festival. She had a small part in an Irish film, The Stag, that's managed to make it to Toronto, so she goes there on Saturday and leaves me at home with baby for 6 days. So needless to say, I'll be over my folks Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. So I'm absolutely open to her feeling
Having
the need
her,
to be able to capitalise on some great stuff that she's done over the last few years. So where that leads us, I'm open to suggestion.
Yeah. Your whole life's ahead of you, Brian.
Looking forward to it. It's exciting. It's frightening to a degree, but it's very exciting at the same time. And I'm not going to try and play out this season and keep an eye on have one eye on the future. I'm going to enjoy this and live in the moment. And then when the time comes,
Yeah, to use a metaphor, it's only a question of moving the dial.
There you go.
Brian O'Driscoll, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.